guys, it's Jessie from Plaid, and welcome to Modern Paint by Number, where we take your favorite classic paint by number and put our own little twist on it so you end up with your own unique work of art. Today we're going to be painting our sparkly night painting, which is great for the holiday season, and I'm going to let you know what supplies we'll need to get started. So first of all, here we have a 12 by 12 inch canvas. So this is a stretched canvas, but feel free to use a wooden panel or whatever you have at home. It doesn't even really need to be 12 by 12. We'll talk about our template in a minute, but you can scale the template. So as long as you have a square canvas, a rectangular canvas, really whatever you have at home will be fine for this. I also have my palette paper, which is just wax coated paper for mixing my paint. I have paper towels here for cleaning my brushes and a water basin, of course. And then for brushes, I have the 10-piece folk art variety set, and I've got a few brushes from that pack. I've got my 3/4 inch flat brush. I have a number 10 flat brush, a number 12 flat, and then I also have a number 1 liner brush, but you just need a couple different size flats, and then a small round brush or a liner brush. That's all you need for this painting. So if you have anything that looks similar to these brushes, you're gonna be fine. I also have a toothbrush here. So this is my painting toothbrush, and I'll show you at the end what this technique is for. I've got a ballpoint pen for transferring my template, which I mentioned. I've got some stencil tape here, or you can use Scotch tape even for this part, painter's tape, whatever you have. I've got some scissors for cutting my template. I've got some folk art transfer paper for transferring my template, and again, I'll explain that in just a minute. And then I have my template itself. So this, you're going to go on plaidonline.com right under the listing for this project, and you can download the template there for free and print it out, and it's going to be 5 pages. So the first 4 pages are our template, so you're going to cut it out. It's got squares on each of them. You're going to piece them together on your canvas just like a puzzle, and it'll line up perfectly for a 12 by 12 canvas. So like I said, if you have a smaller canvas or even a larger canvas, you can scale it up or down on your printer, and it'll still work. And like I said, if you have a rectangular canvas, that works too, don't worry. So you've got our 4 pages of template that you'll cut out. And then our last page is our color mixing reference guide. And what this is for, this is how we'll know what color each of our paint by number sections will be. So when we're doing the paint by number portion of the painting itself, we'll use this as a reference to know which colors to paint where. So sometimes it'll be colors that are just straight out of the bottle, and sometimes it'll be colors that we mix. So that's why it's helpful to have this, so we have a visual reference as we're painting. And then I also have a hairdryer. So just to note, just so we can keep the video at a reasonable length, I've got a hairdryer just to sort of speed up the process between steps of drying. So that being said, we're going to go ahead and we will transfer our template onto our canvas so we can start painting our paint by number. So like I said, I've got this already cut out here just for time's sake. So you're going to piece it together just like the template shows you in the corner. We've got our 4 pieces. And make sure your lines line up. And then we're just going to tape those together so they don't slide around. So I'll make sure all my lines are matched up. And I don't really want to cover up any of my lines, so I'll use a couple little pieces. Make sure my lines are matched up here. And again, you just need a little bit to tack it in place just so it doesn't slide. And we'll match it up over here as well. Okay, so now it's nice, it's put together so we don't have to worry about that. Then I have my transfer paper, which I mentioned. So if you're not familiar with transfer paper, it's a very thin paper that's got sort of a chalky substance on the back of it. This one's got some crumbs on it, some eraser crumbs. A chalky substance on the back of it. So one side is smooth and one side is very rough, and that's the chalky side. So you can see here on the folk art one, it says this side up. So of course you want to make sure that is, we're reading that properly. So this side up, so that makes it really helpful in case you kind of have trouble figuring out which side is the chalky side. So what you do is you want to cut a piece of transfer paper to the size of your design. So I went ahead and I cut it out to be about 12 by 12, which is the size of our canvas, just to make everything a little simpler. And I'm just going to tack this down on the top, sort of like a clipboard. I'm not going to tape it on all sides, and that way I can lift it up as I go to make sure that I'm transferring my template the way I need it to be. And then I'm going to take my template, and you don't have to flip it or reverse it or anything like that. You just put it face up right on top of your transfer paper. And we're going to tack that in place as well so it doesn't slide around while we're transferring. And then what you're going to do to actually transfer the design is if you have a stylus, or you can use the end of your brush, you're going to go over each of your lines with a little bit of pressure, and that's going to transfer that chalky substance onto your canvas. So wherever you kind of draw on it, here for a little example, I'll kind of draw there, and you can see that transferred it onto my canvas. So I'm going to use a ballpoint pen, and the reason I like to use a ballpoint pen is because I can see where my lines are, I can see where I've traced, and that way I know I haven't missed any lines. But if you don't have a pen, like I said, you can just use the back of one of your paintbrushes. You just need that pressure. If the ink doesn't matter, it's the pressure that is what you need. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that now. I'm gonna transfer my pattern. And you wanna put a fair amount of pressure on there. You don't have to press down super hard, but you do wanna make sure that you're pressing down a little bit. You don't wanna draw over it too lightly. Make sure I have this transferred in the center. And you want to follow all the black lines. Where there's dotted lines, that was just the cut line. So on this one, we kind of have this straight line in the middle, so it may be a little bit confusing for some, but just make sure you're following that solid black line. You don't need to worry about the dotted line for this part. That was just for cutting. Let's see if I've got it transferred. All right, so it looks pretty good. So for this part, you can go ahead and transfer the numbers as well, or you can just kind of hang on to your pattern and sort of just follow it as you go for reference, but it's kind of up to you, whichever way you'd like to do it. So I'm gonna pull that off now. And as you can see, it's not super dark, which is good. That's because we want it to be able to cover it up easily with paint. We've got our template transferred onto our canvas. So that said, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna grab my color mixing reference guide, and we are going to add the colors onto this reference guide so we know which colors to paint on which area of our canvas. So to start, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna grab some, let me tell you what colors we've got. We've got navy blue, and this of course is our folk art line of paints. Navy blue, Dutch aqua, lime green, classic green, daffodil yellow, bright pink, and last but not least, we have wicker white. And then outside of our folk art acrylics, we are going to be using some of our glitterific today. So if you've never used glitter before, it's this super, super sparkly, no mess glitter that is in the folk art line. And this color is called hologram. So it's kind of clear and sparkly, and it's really, really great for doing snowy scenes and winter paintings and things like that. So we're gonna be adding some of this at the very end of the painting onto our snowy areas to make it look super sparkly and shiny. So go ahead and grab some of that as well. And then, like I said, back to our color mixing reference guide. We're gonna grab some of our navy blue and put just a tiny bit of that onto our palette. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna pick up some navy blue. Any of your brushes are fine. I just picked up my number 10 flat. And that's going to be our number 1 color. So I'm just gonna paint a little in there, just straight out of the bottle. We're not gonna do any mixing for this color. Just so we know as a visual reference that is the color we'll be using for number 1 when we go to paint our paint by number portion of this painting. So I'm gonna go ahead and rinse my brush off. Now I'm gonna add a little bit of wicker white to my palette. And I'm going to mix 1 part navy blue and 1 part wicker white on my palette. So we get a nice light blue. So I want it a little bit lighter than that, so I'm going to add a little bit more white. Maybe a little more white. I want it a little bit lighter than this. So something that looks sort of like that. It's a nice light blue. And that is the color we're going to be using for our number 2 spot. So go ahead and paint that in. And that way, later on when we're painting our paint by number, if you were to need to go back and mix that color again, we have this as a reference. We have this color here so we know what color we're trying to match. Because I do that all the time. I'll mix a color and I'll love it and I'll start painting, I'll need more. And I start mixing over the color on the palette, and then I can't remember if it's the same as the original color because I've mixed over it. So this is a great way to kind of have that reference, that visual reference while we're painting. So for the third color, we're just gonna grab Wicker White. We've got some on our palette already, so I'm just gonna paint that in. So of course, you really can't see it, but just so we can kind of remember that that is white, so I can see the texture in person. So just as a reminder to myself. And then we are going to grab some classic green and add that to our palette just a tiny bit. Just a tiny, tiny bit. And that is going to be our number 4 color. So number 4 is going to be classic green. So I'll paint that in just as, again, as my reference. So I'll remember that as I'm doing my paint by number. And that is it for our color mixing reference guide. So once you have that all filled out, we can go ahead and we can grab our canvas. And now we know, I'll kind of set this to the side so I can see it. We know which colors we're going to need for each part. So that being said, we're going to go ahead and we're going to start adding the colors to our paint by number. Okay, so once you have your paint by number portion completed, you can see here it's not perfect. Of course, we're going to be painting all over this painting, so we just want to get our base colors down. We want it to get our composition laid out, so you can see the green is a little, I probably could have put a second coat on it, but again, we're going to be painting the full tree over it, so you don't need to worry about things like that. So the first step, after, you can see I dried it as well, after our base painting is dry, we're going to grab our 3/4 inch flat brush. And we're going to be using some navy blue and white to create sort of an ombre effect. We're going to paint along our little pyramid shape here. It looks kind of like a tent right now. We're going to paint along the edges between our light blue and our navy to sort of blend those together. And what that's going to be is sort of that glow effect behind our tree. And then our tree will be in front of it. So to do that, I'm going to pick up some navy blue. And I'm going to pick up a little bit of white. And I'm going to start painting on that line. So you can put a little bit of water on your brush just to help it flow a little. We're going to start painting on that line, back and forth. Pick up water if it starts to get a little dry. Pick up more paint as you need it. You want to keep it flowing. Back and forth on that line, adding darker where you need it and lighter where you need it. Add a little more navy to my palette. You can see how it's already starting to blend, just a couple strokes there. So pick up some navy and some white. And again, I'm picking up some water just to kind of help it flow and blend. So I've got navy here. We're going to start blending back and forth. And you really want to keep your brush going. I know I've stopped a lot, but you want to keep your brush going back and forth to get kind of a smooth glow effect. So we're kind of working on like a gradient here. So if we're used to painting gradients on your painting, something sort of similar to that. So we've got our dark color and our light color, and now we want to have kind of a medium color in the center. So I'll do a little bit lighter over here on the blue side, or the light blue side, I should say. And we're blending that in by going up and down, back and forth in the same direction. You can see here it's a little bit of a harsh line, but keep in mind the tree is going to be painted over that. So what we really want is just all of this area to be very smooth. So again, I'm picking up water on my brush to help spread the paint back and forth, just help it flow really smoothly so I get a nice, smooth gradient effect. And it's okay if you get a little bit over your white. You can just go back and touch it up. It's not a big deal. You just want to keep those nice, you can see I'm going back and forth, up and down. I'm not stopping between those nice long brush strokes to get it to be really smooth and blended. Got a nice blend there. So like I said, this will be sort of a halo that's coming out from behind our tree. I'm going to add a little more white in there. You can spread that lightness out a little further. And like I said, don't forget, this part doesn't matter towards the green trunk because that is going to be covered with our tree. All right, so you can see we have that nice blend there. So that's kind of what we're looking for. You can spend tons of time on this, but it's one of those things where you kind of just need to know when to stop. You could be sitting here painting that gradient all day long, but it doesn't have to be perfect. You just want to have that sort of nice halo effect that's pretty apparent in your painting. All right, so I'm going to stop there, and then we're going to do the exact same thing on our left side. So I'll start with some navy, pick up a little bit of white, and I'm going to start on that center line, picking up water to help blend the paint, just to help it go sort of glide back and forth across the canvas. Picking up more white when you need it, and picking up more navy when you need it. And if you get a little over the green trunk we've painted here, don't worry about that either. Not a big deal. If you feel like you've got too much paint on your brush, feel free to sort of offload your brush a little, or feel like you need to rinse it out maybe and sort of start fresh. If you've got too much white or too much navy in your brush. Nice and smooth back and forth. Sort of rinse my brush out and grab some of just the navy. Just sort of blend it back in there. So we've got it pretty blended there. Again, you can end up doing this all day long. So you just kind of have to hold it up and decide when it is that you feel like it's good enough and you can stop. Again, I'm adding light blue and white on the inside, and then I'm adding navy and blending in on the outside. Get a nice smooth gradient. Okay, so I'm happy with that. I'm going to stop there and I'm going to rinse my brush off. I'm going to kind of clean up my area a little. I'm going to grab a new paper towel to keep painting. And I'm also going to go ahead and I'm going to dry my painting. So again, that's why I have my hair dryer here, just to kind of keep the video going so we don't have to pause too much. But if you are watching this video later on, feel free to just pause your video if you don't have a hair dryer, just let your painting dry, and then come back when your painting is dry and just keep on playing the video. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. Okay, so that's dry enough. So I'm going to go ahead and stick my brush back. And now you're going to want to have some classic green on your palette. So I already have some here. That's sort of our darker of the two greens that we've got in our palette today. So you want some classic green on your palette. Go ahead and add some if you don't have any more. And we are going to grab our number 12 flat brush. We've got classic green on number 12. And what we're going to do next is we're going to start painting the branches of our Christmas tree. So to do that, we're going to hold our brush vertically. So we're not holding it flat how we would normally paint as if we were going to base coat. We're holding it vertically this way so that it's going up and down. We're going to start at the top and we're going to drag to the right and make a little bit of a wisp. And then we're going to drag to the left and make a little bit of a wisp. So what I'm kind of doing is I'm flicking my hand a little bit because if you sort of just stop, you get sort of that wide edge on the end. And that's what we want. We want that nice sharp flick that looks kind of like a fluffy branch coming out of a pine tree or an evergreen tree, whatever kind of tree this is for you. So we're going to do that all the way down. And of course, just like a Christmas tree, we're going to make it go wider as we get down to the base of our tree. So here we're going to start small at the top, flicking out on the right side and flicking out on the left side, going all the way down. Getting wider and wider as we get to the base. And we're kind of following this pyramid shape that we started with. So if you need a little bit of a guide, just kind of go by that shape there, and it gives you a little bit of an outline of kind of where you want to fill in with your little branches. You can see I'm just sort of dipping my water in a little bit, dipping my brush in a little bit of water. If I feel like it's starting to get dry or like my brush is starting to drag, that just kind of helps my brush to glide across the canvas a little bit. We're just continuing down, doing these little flicks. You can see how my hand is sort of flicking outwards. I'm getting down to the bottom here. So you see how we got wider as we got to the base. And then of course our widest branches will be at the very bottom. So your tree should look a little something like this right now. So you've got them going out, we're a little bit narrower at the top, and then they get wider towards the base. And it's sort of feather looking because you can still see we have this trunk going up the center, and we just have the branches on the left or the right. But of course, if you look at a real tree, it doesn't just have branches on the left and the right, it has branches going all around the tree. So to sort of get that effect, you want to go back up at the top and sort of go into the center here and do the same flicking in rows all the way down. So it looks like there's branches coming out of the front of the tree as well. We don't want it to just look like a flat tree. So it's kind of difficult to see on screen. It just looks like we're painting green on top of green, which we are, of course. But it's really helping to fill in the tree. And you can see in real life, you can see the texture that it's sort of giving the tree by adding more branches to the front. So we're going to kind of keep doing this all the way down the front of the tree. I'm going to grab a little more of my classic green. When we get to the bottom, we want to make sure we go out on the front as well, because we have kind of that skirt of branches going around the front that you would see against the snow, of course. So you want to make sure we get that effect as well. So all around the bottom of our tree, we have this little skirt of branches that you can see against the snow here. Okay, so you can see now we have a really nice full Christmas tree shape, or just evergreen tree. It doesn't have to be a Christmas tree. We'll talk about that a little bit more when we get to the ornament section of the painting. But yeah, just something to keep in mind. If you want it to kind of be up in your house all year long, it doesn't have to be a holiday tree, or if that's not something that you want for your home, it can just be a regular, just winter tree as well. Just a little winter scene. Okay. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add a little bit of a shadow underneath our tree. Of course, it looks like there's some sort of light coming down on top of our tree or coming from behind it, but either way, there'd be a little bit of a shadow here in the front. So we're going to grab some of this light blue that we use. If you need to mix some more, feel free. It was navy blue and white. So a nice light blue, similar to the color we used for the triangle. And all we're going to do is we're going to take, I still have my number 10 flat brush. We're going to take our brush, and this time we're holding it horizontally, and we're just going to sort of sketch in a little bit of that light blue right there. Very lightly, just sort of sketch in that shadow so it looks like there's some light coming from behind our tree. You can see there we have a nice little shadow now. Super simple. We're going to go ahead and clean our brush off. And the next step is going to be to dry our painting. So go ahead now, if you don't have a dryer, like I said, feel free to pause the painting and let your painting dry a little bit, but I'm going to go ahead and hit it with my hair dryer. Okay, so that's pretty dry. So now we're ready to move on to our next step. So the next step is going to be to add some snow to our tree. So to do that, we'll need Wicker White. I've got some on my palette here already, but it's got a little bit of blue in it, so I want some pure white. So I'm going to put a little bit of fresh Wicker White onto my palette. And I'm also going to grab my number 12 flat brush. So any medium to small flat brush is fine for this part. And I'm going to pick up a little bit of Wicker White on my brush. And then just like before, remember when we were making our branches going down, we were holding our brush vertically. So we're going to hold our brush the same way, but instead of going down, we are going to flick our brush upwards. And the reason we're doing that is because you want it to look like snow has fallen on each branch, and kind of at the tip of each branch, it's sort of clumped together and clustered, like it's got this really heavy snow sitting on it. So I'll kind of show you what I mean on the top here. So I'm going to start on the left side, and I'm going to press down and pull up. And then on the right side, I'm going to press down and pull up. The reason we're pressing down is because you want to get a little bit of a larger stroke at the bottom, and then we want it to be thinner as you go up. So press down and pull up. So you can see how I did that there. So feel free, if you've got a piece of scrap paper around or even junk mail or whatever it is, to grab a darker color and kind of practice those strokes, the pressing down and the pulling up to get different widths of your paint stroke. But that's what I'm going to be doing for kind of just all over our painting. So here, I'm going to do one here, press down, pull up, and it's kind of just going to be random. Press down, pull up, wherever we think that there's a large branch covered in snow on our tree. And again, we're just pressing down and pulling up to make it look like there's heavy snow sitting on the branches of this tree that's outside during the winter. Press down, pull up, press down, pull up. You want it to be pretty random. You don't really want it to be going in a pattern. So just keep that in mind. You don't want it to be sort of a grid or anything like that. Sort of try to stay away from that. You can see I'm grabbing the edges too. And making sure I have some nice strokes in the middle, pressing down and pulling up. And this really gives it a lot more dimension. You can see now that it's really starting to look like a round, full tree. As we get to the bottom, we're making sure we've got them nice and filled in where there would be snow on our branches. So there we go. You can see now it looks like we've got lots of snow on our branches here. It's a very snowy area that this tree is sitting on. It looks like it just had a big snowstorm. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to rinse my brush off. Actually, now while I have white on my brush, if you painted over sort of the edges here with some blue while we were doing our grading effect, now's a good time to kind of go back and touch that up, just like I did here. I kind of went a little overboard and I got a little bit of paint over that edge. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to fix it really quick while I've got this white paint on my brush. So feel free to do the same if you had the same problem as me. Just to sort of smooth out that edge so it looks like a nice smooth ground now. Rinse my brush off. And the next brush I'm going to grab is my #1 liner brush. So any small liner brush or round brush that you have will work for this step. And I'm also going to grab my lime green. So this is a really pretty bright green color in the folk art line. Go ahead and put a little bit of lime green. You don't need a whole lot for this part. And what we're going to do here is just add a little bit more texture. So we've only got the one green in the tree. And of course, if this was a real tree, if we were really looking at a photograph of a tree, we'd be seeing all different kinds of greens. There'd be light greens and dark greens and everything in between. So we want to add a little bit more dimension to our tree and add another color of green to it just to make it look a little bit more real. So I'm loading my brush up with my lime green. And we're going to do a really similar technique that we just did with the snow. We're going to do tiny brush strokes going upwards. And we're just going to kind of do them all over in between our snowy areas. So again, push down, pull up, and I'm making them curved just like we did our little snow branches. We're just kind of going in between to give it a little bit more dimension and a little bit more realness. So it doesn't look so flat. Just a little bit of green to make it pop a little bit. You can see they're much smaller than the white brush strokes we did. You can see already that it's giving the tree a little bit more dimension. Okay, so now we've got a couple different greens in there in addition to the white snow that we've painted, and it looks a little bit more dimensional. So the next step of the painting is to paint the ornaments. So like I mentioned earlier, if you'd rather this just be a winter tree, just a beautiful snowy scene, you can kind of stop here, or pause here I should say, and wait until we get some of the more textured techniques for the end. But really quick, we're going to do some ornaments and paint a star in case you do want this to be a Christmas tree for your home. So to do that, I'm going to grab 3 different colors. I'm going to grab my bright pink, and put some of that on my palette, just a little bit. You don't need very much of this at all. I'm going to grab some Daffodil Yellow and also some Dutch Aqua. So for this part, if you want to have different colored ornaments, feel free. So if you want to match the ornaments to the decorations of your home, if you have a different color palette for your home, by all means, you can do reds and greens and golds if you want something a little more traditional. But our tree right here today is going to have some colored ornaments. So to paint these ornaments, I want them to be sort of glass balls or something like that, or maybe even they're lights. I'm not really sure what they are on this tree, but I want them to be really perfectly round. And in order to do that, I don't want to have to use a tiny little liner brush and paint a perfect little circle because that will take forever. And I'll want to make every single one perfect, but we're going to use the end of our brush as a stamp. So to do that, I'm going to dip it in one of the colors. I'm going to start with my bright pink. And I'm just going to make a dot on the canvas, just a little stamp there. So we're just going to make little dots all over our little Christmas tree here. And again, it does not have to be a Christmas tree. So if you just kind of want to skip this step, you can fast forward the video and go towards where we're done sort of stamping all of these little Christmas ornaments, because we're going to be doing some more fun techniques too after we add these ornaments. Okay, so that's it for my pink. You can add as many or as few of each color as you'd like. I'm going to pick up some of my Dutch Aqua. If you don't want to use the end of your brush, another great way to get perfect little dots like this is to use a brand new pencil eraser. So a nice pencil right out of the box that'll have a nice flat eraser, and that works really well for things like this too. If you've got one of those laying around, feel free to grab that and use that instead. I'll give you a little bit bigger of a dot. Just gonna wipe my brush off. And the last color we're going to do is our Daffodil Yellow. Nice, brightly colored ornaments for this tree. Attention to the edge, the branches where there might be some ornaments hanging off of. Okay, and that is it for my ornaments. Another little detail we can add here is a star at the top. So to do our star, I'm going to dip my brush in the yellow again, and I'm going to sort of swirl it around, and I want a good bit of paint on there to make sort of a large dot. So I've got a big dot of paint right there, and I'm going to wipe my brush off. And I'm going to pick up my liner brush again. So this is the one we use to paint our tiny lime green accents. And I'm going to start in the middle, and I'm going to pull out to make it look like my little tree topper is shining and sparkling. So we're just kind of pulling that paint out to make it look like a shining star at the top of our tree. So now I've got a nice little Christmas tree here. So this is the time where if you don't want it to be a Christmas tree, you just want it to be a snowy tree, you can come back to the painting and sort of pick back up because we're kind of done with the Christmas accents for it. So the next thing we're going to be doing is we're going to be doing some what is called fly specking. So if you've never heard of fly specking, that is the reason that we needed the toothbrush here. So you can use an old toothbrush for this and clean it and make it your painting toothbrush, or you can go to the dollar store and get a toothbrush and just keep it sort of in your painting stash. But this is a really great way to make little snow texture, or if you're doing a space painting, it looks like stars, any sort of little tiny dot texture on a painting. This is the way that we're going to do it. So to do that, we'll need Wicker White. So again, I have some Wicker White here on my palette, but if you need some more, go ahead and add some to your palette now. I'm going to dip the bristles of my brush in Wicker White, and then I'm going to dip it in some water. So I'm dipping it in my water, so I have a really wet white paint on the bristles of my brush. I want it to be super wet, a little bit soupy, and I want that nice white paint on there. I'm going to dab off some of the excess. I'm going to practice here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rake my thumb across the bristles of the brush. So I'm going to practice here and see how it looks. And I like the way it looks. So practice on a napkin or something before you do it right on your paper, or on your canvas, I should say. So now I'm just going to flick these bristles, aiming at my painting. And you can see we're getting that really beautiful, flurry, soft snow texture. So I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to do it all over my little painting here. So I want it all over the sky. You can do as much of this or as little of this as you want. I'm going over my tree because of course there'd be snow in front of my tree as well. I want really soft, pretty snow texture all over my painting. You can see it looks like it's a really nice, pretty snow here in this scene. I'm going to do that all over. And again, you can do as much or as little of this as you want. I like to do a lot, so it looks like kind of a little bit of a snowstorm. Okay, so that is it for that step. And now comes one of my favorite parts. So we talked a little bit about it in the beginning. We've got this awesome paint called Glitterific. So what that is, I'm going to turn my palette around a little bit here. What that is this amazing no mess glitter that we have. So again, this is called Glitterific. It's one of my favorite paints that we have. It's, like I said, it's no mess. It's completely encapsulated in the base of the glitter so it doesn't get all over you, which I love because I hate getting glitter everywhere. But it is super, super sparkly. It's got tons of different size particles in it, so it just catches the light so beautifully. And this color I have here is called Hologram. And so it's a nice, clear, white, sparkly finish. So this is going to be perfect for our snow. So I'm going to pour a little bit of this out onto my palette. You can see how super sparkly it is already. You can see it's sort of sparkle there. And I'm going to pick up one of my medium-sized flat brushes. So I'm going to grab my number 10 flat. And I'm going to use this to add some glitter to each of the white areas on our tree. So you want this to look like the snow is just sparkling and catching the light. It's just sort of like a magical little scene here. So we are using our brush to just add some glitter. You can see how easy it is to add. It's, like I said, it's no mess. You can see how it's already super sparkly where we're adding the glitter. But I'm going to add it to each of the white sections on my tree. And you can use a palette knife for Glitterific. It's super thick and it's really easy to sort of spread when you're putting on a project like this. So you can use a brush, or like I said, you can use a palette knife. Even a popsicle stick will work sometimes for just sort of spreading the glitter on, especially if you're spreading it on a large area. But I kind of, when I'm doing little detailed areas like this, I like to use a brush to make sure I can kind of have some control over where the glitter is being placed. Just kind of spread it around. It looks so pretty. I'm gonna grab a little more glitter. I'm starting to run out. And we're just adding it with our little flat brush to all of our white areas where it looks like there's snow. And then once you've got it on all of your little brush strokes on your tree, make sure I didn't miss any. I also want to add it all over our snowy bank here. So I want that to look like it's sparkling too. Of course, that is covered in snow as well. So I'm just going to paint that on there, sort of spread it around to make sure that I have this nice sparkle on all of this white area as well. And again, for areas like this, you could use a popsicle stick even to smear it, or a palette knife if you've got one at home, but the brush works fine too. Okay, so when you're finished with your painting, make sure you sign it because you've got your own unique piece of artwork here. And that is it for our sparkly night painting. So when you're finished with your painting, make sure to post it online, #PlaidCrafts so we can see it. For more inspiration and to see the rest of our modern paint by numbers, you can go to plaidonline.com. Keep an eye out for next month's painting, so it will be January coming up, and we will see you then. Bye!